Hello, my beautiful blossoms, blooms, and buds. I'm Rosebud Reads, and welcome to my book garden. Welcome also to part 6 of Peerless, book 3. It's also our final part of Peerless, for book 3. We still have 2 other books, but I'm very excited about it. Hang on. I think I tapped it. Oops. Sorry, guys. Okay. Hello, Chi Kiki. Sorry about that with the readjusting. Otherwise, when I'm reading, it looks like I'm disappearing or eating the screen. No. But yeah, it's the 6th and final stream of Peerless Book 3, which I'm very excited about. Regarding the stream, this is a very chill stream, which means I will be talking to myself, I will be talking to the book, I will be talking to my lovely, lovely people in the book garden. But yeah, that's not everybody's cup of tea, and that is perfectly okay, but maybe stick around. Hi, sorry about that. The internet was being difficult, so we had to reset it, but I am back. I'm just gonna keep going with the little intro stuff. So, just a heads up, I have not read this story before, but we have had some parts that have been potentially triggering. So, if that happens during the live, you will notice it in the title, description, and it will be noted on the timestamps of the areas that are potentially triggering. But if you're here for the live, one, I appreciate you. But two, I cannot predict when something triggering is going to pop up. So I guess listen at your own risk. I will do my best if I sense that something is coming up to be like, hey, it sounds like it's kind of going here. I'm going to put a trigger timestamp here. If I'm correct, there will be a trigger timestamp in the video. If not, there won't be. But yeah, be mindful and be kind to yourself. But hello, Annika. Hi, just got here after watching the he-she shenanigans. Or he-shy. But yeah, welcome. That kind of goes into our next point, which is pronunciation is hard. I may stumble over some words or completely mangle them, but I am doing my best, and I am open to constructive criticism and corrections. Occasionally, I will look up a word if I am not 100% certain what it is. This author uses some very interesting vocabulary, literally, some very interesting vocabulary that I haven't seen or not necessarily familiar with on a normal basis. Like hoary, which is kind of the whitening of hair and such. Yes, hello, Truffle, and happy Earth Day to you too. I wore green today. It's kind of army green, but it counts. It definitely counts. But yeah. Thank you. Happy Administrative Professionals Day. I just wore a shirt with birds on it for the day. Nice. I think that's about it that we need to go over. The only thing new from yesterday is that I took my dog for a walk, and almost immediately he found a chicken bone, so I get to watch for that this weekend, which is yay! I hope my dog is fine. He probably will be, but I'm just like, really? the second we get out here and I'm being nice and taking you for a walk, you find a chicken bone. It's like, come on, man. But no, we did it. Yeah. Okay. So I think we'll just go ahead and get started. This stream's supposed to be, well, probably going to end up being rather a bit longer than before. They don't know what's good for them. I had a cat who loved to chew on Nerf darts. Oh, lovely, non very digestible Nerf darts. Fun. My sister's dog used to eat Nerf darts. That turned out to be an expensive hobby. I imagine so. Okay. So, okay. I think we will get started. 9:45. Okay. I probably won't make it the whole time. I'm in office more with my new job, so I have to get up earlier. All good, Annika. It will always be here for later. Okay. 109. Prior to this, yesterday we had Chubuchu discovering where, yeah, definitely does. Chubuchu just got the location for basically a armory. And then talked to Yuan Sensi, the legitimate heir to the Yuan family and a descendant of Yuan Shu, Emperor Xiao Wu of Wei. So he had the power of the Yuan family had waned, though some members still served as court officials. It made no difference. Before I was taken in by the Wu family, my father, who was gravely ill, summoned me to his deathbed. He told me the Yuan family had a hidden trove of treasure filled with gold, silver, and armor. It was meant for future uprising. Even if it wouldn't be put to use in my generation or the next, I must still pass down the secret. It is the will of our Yuan family ancestors, and I cannot betray them. He sighed. It was such a huge secret to suddenly learn. I was constantly anxious. When I was with the Yu family, despite my master's careful guidance and despite Shimu and Shimei's warmth, my heart was heavy. I didn't dare tell anyone what I had learned. One day, my master said he wished to betroth Shimei to me. After much thought, I decided I had to leave. I was afraid that someday someone would learn of the treasure and hunt me down. Setting aside my own fate, no one in Shimei's family would have been safe. If Shimei married me and we had a child, there would have been one more person in the world forced to bear the burden of this secret. No worries, Truffle. I know, it's a different day, so it makes things a bit weird time-wise, so no worries. See nothing, at least I have a glimmer of hope. But I didn't expect that despite my efforts, you'd already know everything. At first, it was just something I happened to know, said Chubuchu. It wasn't until you arrived in Bolang and investigated your background that I connected you to the hidden treasure of the Yuan clan. So basically Yuan Sensi asked, please don't mention this to His Majesty, even though I'm not like going to revolt, like it's still not great. And then he's saying, please rest assured, now that I'm serving as an official in Boling, I'll visit Shimei often and send people to look after her grave. I won't let Chusan cause any more trouble. That's the most I can do for her now. But yeah. And then Feng Xiao kind of is calling out Chubu Chu. He's like, so, you meant to keep me out of this whole armory of Yuan clan, um, and sent me off on a little bit of a goose chase. You just wanted someone to talk to. So, sorry, I'm just kind of scanning for what's important. Chu Long colluded with the Southern Dynasty and committed the serious crime of treason. Even if His Majesty shows some lenience in deference to the Chu clan, Chu Long won't keep his position as the future head of the family. If he wants to save himself, he'll need to make some tough decisions. Meanwhile, Chu San has taken innocent lives through this poisoning scheme. He won't escape a conviction of murder. Oh yeah, Chu San was trying to poison his wife, who was the one who started all the stuff with Me.Mimo. Well, not started. Chu San started that whole aspect, but there was that kerfuffle. But yes. So basically, they're about to start out on another journey. Let us begin. Chapter 109. I guess I'll reset this time to 15. Okay. Perhaps his ears had been damaged from all the torment. After his meal, Chubu Chu spent the entire night dreaming of Feng Xiao. In the dream, there was only darkness, with no sun or moon in sight. There was only Feng Xiao bounding about in high spirits, saying in his melodious voice, "One time, another time." Those words rang in his ears until he woke, stubborn and clinging as willow catkins in spring. They stuck to him like the catkins stuck to his clothes, impossible to dislodge and terribly vexing. He woke in a daze and rose to dress. He was in the middle of pulling on his boots when there was a knock at the door. Chubu Chu seriously considered jumping out the window and making his escape. Fortunately, a voice on the other side of the door saved him from the tragedy of falling from the second floor and breaking his legs. "I'm sorry to bother you, Chu Gonzi. I was wondering if you were free to talk. If you aren't, I'll come back later." It was Chu Pei. "Hello, Momar's Rover. How you doing tonight?" Chubu Chu breathed a sigh of relief. "Go to the neighboring tea house and reserve a room. I'll join you shortly." Chu Pei responded in affirmation, and the sound of his footsteps faded into the distance. A morning without Feng air was a beautiful thing, as long as Chubu Chu ignored last night's leftovers still sitting on the table. Feng Xiao was talking about his life, and Chubu Chu is like, "Kill me now." Feng Xiao's fastidiousness had reached such heights that Chubu Chu had to bow to him in defeat. Who else would train themselves to use the zither as a weapon, also they could drive off their opponent with sound waves and internal energy rather than having to touch them? No one but Feng Er. Yet Feng Xiao had been willing to carry Chubu Chu out of the carriage and into the inn. This was an unprecedented degree of generosity. The smell of their discarded meal hung in the air, none too pleasant. Chubu Chu quickened his steps and left, unwilling to stay a moment longer. In the tea house, Chu Pei was restless. If a few days ago someone had told him Chu Ji was not only alive, but held the Chu family's fate in his hands, he would have thought it absurd. In his memories, that child had always been silent. Even when he was ill from the abuse he suffered, he'd never complained or tattled to Chu Pei. Later, when Chu Pei had his own children and experienced what it meant to be a father, he looked back on his nephew with a gnawing guilt. In just 2 days, the Chu family had undergone a series of earth-shattering changes. The clan was like a ship swaying in a typhoon, battered by waves and in danger of capsizing at any moment. There wasn't a single member of the family who was unaffected. The women spent their days weeping. Other members cursed Chubuchu, wishing a terrible death on him. Chupei knew Chubuchu wouldn't take their vitriol to heart. The moment he'd left the Chu family, he'd severed all connection to them. The imperial verdict had yet to be issued. Chu Yang had written to the Lu clan of Fanyang, asking them to write a letter of appeal. Chu Pei had no idea if this would have any effect. Since Chu Pei was the only son of the Chu family who had emerged unscathed, as well as the man Lady Yu had entrusted her helpless son to, it made sense that Chu Yang had sent him to beg for clemency. Chu Yang had urged Chu Pei repeatedly to choose his words carefully and avoid provoking Chu Buchu. If Chu Buchu proposed any conditions, he was to agree at once, then think them over after he got back. Chu Pei smiled bitterly at the memory. He wasn't afraid of any conditions Chu Buchu might propose. What he feared was that Chu Buchu wouldn't propose any conditions at all. I'm glad you're doing good, Mo River. The Chu clan of Boling was one of the famed noble families everyone flocked to. Hello, Esper Lady. We literally just started. I think I've read maybe a page and a half. How are you doing tonight? Or since the stream? But yeah. What he feared was that Chu Buchu wouldn't propose any conditions at all. So Chu Pei is at the inn, and he's meeting with Chu Buchu after everything went down, and people are arrested, and basically, Chu Yang sent Chu Buchu to, try to beg for clemency. The Chu clan of Boling was one of the famed noble families everyone flocked to. Many with the surname Chu schemed to get close to them, hoping to borrow some of their reputation. But such temptations didn't work on Chu Buchu. I brought you with me because you were the first to meet Chu Gonzi and his companions outside the city, Chu Pei reminded the girl at his side. You have a rapport with them. If you need to kneel and plead with him, don't hesitate. But you must not speak unless I say so. I understand. Chu Junyang's face was tight with unease. In a single night, her father had become a murderer, and her mother had become his accomplice. Both were now in prison. Chu Junyang and her siblings had come crashing down from where they sat among the clouds in the harsh dust of the world. They'd spent the day at a loss, filled with anxiety, and I'm glad you're doing good, Esperly. She wanted to hate Chu Buchu, but when she saw his tall, slender figure enter the room, she couldn't muster any resentment. Instead, she felt a jumble of conflicting emotions, impossible to express. Chu Buchu's face was as indifferent as it had been the day they'd met. There was no sign that he felt anything when he saw them. I hope you're not here to plead for leniency, he said. How could we dare to at this point? I came today because I wanted to see you. That's all. Chu Pei's mouth twisted in a wry smile. Chu Buchu inclined his head, waiting for him to continue. But Chu Pei didn't know what to say. He was over 50 years old, and he'd traveled all across the land, even met the emperor himself. Yet at this moment, he felt terribly self-conscious. I betrayed my sister-in-law's trust. He weighed his words carefully, fearing to provoke Chu Buchu. I know you feel resentment towards us, and it's true that the Chu family has done you a great wrong. Father himself is filled with regret. Chu Buchu suddenly smiled. If I had died back then, would Chu Yang have been filled with regret? Chu Pei was speechless. Of course his father would have felt no regret. All the way until his brother's arrest, his father had only regretted not decisively killing Chu Buchu in his childhood. He hadn't felt the slightest remorse at not treating him better. Chu Pei's heart sank. There were no words he could say to justify himself. He sighed. Is there anything I can do? If you wish to move my sister-in-law's grave to the Chu family cemetery. She was never buried, said Chu Buchu. What is there to move? It was impossible to continue the conversation. Another man might have overturned the table in rage, but Chu Pei had always been meek. No matter what Chu Buchu said, he accepted it all. It's my fault. If I had been more resolute. Do you want to be the head of the Chu family? Chu Buchu asked. Chu Pei jerked his head up and met his eyes. Chu Buchu smiled meaningfully. You had 3 older brothers ahead of you, all legitimate. Your turn would have never come. But things are different now. Even if the rest of the Chu family can avoid being implicated by Chu Da's actions and save themselves, no one would accept any of your brothers as their leader. But there's still hope for you. I've never thought about it, said Chu Pei weakly. Strength is required to protect yourself and the people you care about. Now that the main lines of descent have collapsed, if you don't take a stand, you'll give the world a chance to trample you. Chu Pei remained silent, but Chu Buchu knew he'd taken his words to heart. This 4th son of the Chu family was a talented man, but his father and brothers had always been above him in status. As the years passed, he hadn't been able to make much of anything of himself. Though he'd gained some small fame as a scholar out in the world, whenever people spoke of him, they always appended the line, he comes from the Chu clan of Boling. Chu Buchu had found a way out, but Chu Pei had not. He was destined to be bound by those words, the Chu clan of Boling, all his life. Honor was at a time... I am not doing great with the reading tonight. Honor was at times a shackle. Another figure slipped into the room, a servant for the commandery governor's residence. Chu Langjun, he said, our lord wishes to invite you to his residence when you're free. Chu Buchu nodded. I'll go now. Chu Pei knew the conversation was over. Quickly, he said. I'll visit my sister-in-law's grave regularly to look after it. While you're out in the world, be sure to take care of yourself. He took a prescription from his sleeve and handed it to Chu Buchu. You must know that long-standing noble families like ours always keep a couple of secret medicinal recipes. I can tell your health is poor. This is a prescription I found at the manor. It can help adjust the workings of your body. Dr. Sun has already reviewed it, he added awkwardly. I know you lack for nothing in your current position, but if you ever need anything, just write to me. I'll do my best to help. Chu Buchu hesitated, but accepted the prescription. Chu Pei breathed a sigh of relief. Talking to his nephew was more stressful than meeting the emperor. Yeah, I could see how that would be true. Please think carefully about what I said, said Chu Buchu. If you succeed your father as head of the Chu clan, I might consider appealing to His Majesty on your behalf. Perhaps the innocent women and children of the Chu clan will be spared. He glanced at Chu Jiuniang, and Chu Yang won't need to give Chu Jiuniang to Feng Xiao as his concubine. Ooh, do I sense a little bit of jealousy? Chu Jiuniang was incredulous. Did grandfather really offer that? She looked at Chu Pei, who averted his gaze. Chu Gonzi. Chu Gonzi. Chu Jiuniang called to Chu Buchu as he began to leave. She finally asked the word she'd been holding back. Are you really who they say you are? Are you my brother? Chu Buchu didn't stop walking. Even if the Chu family isn't completely finished, they've suffered a grievous grievous blow, he said blandly. You wanted to learn medicine from Sun Jimin. Here is your opportunity. Don't be all talk, no action like women who spend all day fretting, too afraid to do anything. I don't wish to disdain you. Chu Jiu Niang's face twisted. Just as Chu Pei feared she would surge forward and begin interrogating Chu Buchu, she fell to her knees and pressed her forehead to the ground. I'm sorry. Chu Buchu paused. I'm sorry, whispered Chu Jiu Niang again. I heard about what happened to you. I have no right to speak for my parents, but I was born their daughter, and I cannot escape responsibility for how they treated you. And after what they've done now, I know I can't plead on their behalf. I can only apologize and ask you to live happily from now on, free from all difficulties and hardships. Her lips parted again as if to call him brother, but the word evaporated on her tongue. Once Chu Buchu was gone, Chu Pei stepped forward and helped her up. He sighed at the sight of the tears streaming down her face. Why do you do this to yourself? I know I should hate him. Chu Jiu Niang had rubbed her eyes red, but her tears wouldn't stop. But whenever I think about how I was pampered from birth while he was suffering, wandering heaven knows where, I can't. It's not your fault, said Chu Pei morosely. But he didn't do anything to us, said Chu Jiu Niang. Though he came back and arrested uncle and father, he had a reason for it. He didn't do it just to punish us. And yet everyone in the Chu family is cursing him behind his back. For some reason, my heart aches. Chu Pei patted her head and said nothing. I feel bad for her. Like she didn't ask to be born into this family, and she seems like she's genuinely like a good kid. I guess a good young lady. I don't know if she's exactly a kid, but like yeah. Chu Pei patted her head and said nothing. Perhaps in Chu Jiuniang, Chu Buchu had seen a sliver of warmth in the Chu family, and that was why he hadn't dealt them the fatal blow. Or perhaps it had been for the sake of the deceased Lady Yu and Chu Er. Whatever the case, this was the best outcome they could hope for. Chu Buchu let himself be guided into the rear garden of the commandery governor's residence, where he came upon Feng Xiao and Yuan Shenxi chatting and laughing together. They seemed to get on swimmingly, practically about to swear vows of brotherhood. He sighed. Feng Xiao had shown no enthusiasm toward Governor Yuan previously. Yet the moment he'd learned of the secret treasure, he was on him like a weasel who'd caught the scent of fish, determined to get a bite. Of course he is. When Yuan Sensi saw Chu Buchu, a smile came to his face, and he stood and cupped his hands, familiar yet courteous. Buchu, Deputy Chief Fang said you've already told him everything and that you're preparing to search for the treasure together. Chu Buchu shot Feng Xiao a look. You really let no opportunity pass you by, do you? Feng Xiao looked back with an innocent expression, as if he hadn't the slightest idea why Chu Buchu was glaring at him. All Yuan Sensi saw was that Chu Buchu hadn't objected, so he said, Follow me. He led them to the study, where he removed a book from the bookshelf and fished a bamboo bookmark from between the pages. The bookmark was weathered and clearly old. Upon closer examination, it seemed to be two pieces of bamboo glued together. Splitting them with a knife revealed a tiny cloth tucked inside. Yuan Sensi carefully picked up the flimsy piece of cloth and unfurled it, revealing it to be roughly the size of half a palm. On it, a vista was depicted in special ink. There was a snow-capped mountain, and halfway up, a cave. A small stream bubbled between turquoise rocks. Chu Buchu and Feng Xiao examined it, but couldn't tell what location the painting depicted. After all, many natural landscapes looked quite the same. If the Wei dynasty had really hidden a treasure trove intended for their descendants, they surely provided more than this vague lead. This didn't look like a riddle at all. It seemed more like a prank. This is the first time I've opened the bookmark to see what's inside, confessed Yuan Sensi. Do you have any idea where the mountain is? Asked Chubuchu. Yes, said Yuan Sensi with determination. It's Mount Tianan in Hang Province. Oh. All right. Chapter 110. 3415. Okay. 110. Hang Province contained the former capital city of Pingcheng. Before Emperor Xiao Wen had relocated his capital to Liuyang, it had been the capital of the Wei dynasty for generations. Even when it was no longer the capital, several emperors had continued living there. An air of royalty remained, imparting the city with a regal qi. Today, although nowhere near as prosperous as Liuyang, it was still a major metropolis. North of the city, everything beyond the thin lines of the official roads were forest. It was now summer, and the leaves on the trees were lush as they swayed delicately in the wind. At the foot of the mountain, beside the main road, sat a tea house. Its thatched roof was woven from hay and cattail reeds supported on bamboo poles, and it sheltered a small area of spread mats without even a table. A tea house like this was only meant as a small rest stop for passing woodcutters and hunters before they entered the mountains. A woodcutter stood inside it as at a bit of a loss. It was rare to meet anyone here, much less four people taking up all the cattail mats. As he tried to walk around them, one of the strangers called out, "Sir, please wait." A Shuiyue guard approached with a bowl of steaming tea. They had purchased the hot tea and bowls outside the city. Chubochu loathed extravagant purchases and had been adamantly against spending on new bowls. Naturally, Feng Xiao had footed the bill. The woodcutter accepted the tea. Bewildered, he asked, "Do your lordships wish to hike up the mountain?" He had noticed that two of them were better dressed than the others, and surmised that they were young masters of a wealthy family who had come out to enjoy themselves. He remarked, glancing up at the sky, "It looks like a storm's coming. I suggest you wait before going up the mountain." The Shuyue guard smiled. "Thank you very much for the warning. But we'd like to ask you something. Is there a Mount Tiannan around here somewhere?" The woodcutter was about to shake his head, then checked himself. There is a mountain. We locals call it Ru Yi Mountain, but one of the scholars in the county told me it has another name. Tian something. I can't remember. It might be the mountain that you're talking about." "Where is the mountain?" asked the Shuyue guard. The woodcutter pointed straight ahead. "It's that one." Everyone followed his pointed finger. Behind the mountain before them jutted a second peak. It was quite a bit taller than the mountain around it, and its summit shrouded in mist like the hidden abode of immortals. Feng Xiao looked at Chubuchu, who shook his head slightly. He wasn't sure either. The woodcutter finished his tea and watched as the group rose and bade him farewell. When they started walking in the direction of the mountain, he warned them again. "The mountain roads will be slippery from the rain. It's no joke." Feng Xiao smiled. "So we need to hurry up the mountain before the rain arrives. Thank you." He walked in front, fanning himself, while Chubuchu walked with one guard in front and one guard behind for protection. A carriage was no good in terrain like this. Chubuchu grabbed a length of bamboo to use as a walking stick and followed Feng Xiao up the mountain trail, albeit at a markedly slower pace. The woodcutter watched their retreating backs in astonishment. They hadn't listened to his advice at all. He shook his head and sighed. Ah, young people these days. Then he picked up his basket and axe and trudged off towards another slope. He couldn't have known that at that very moment Feng Xiao was saying to Chubuchu, "Dark clouds overhead. Are you sure there'll be no rain today?" Chubuchu's lashes fluttered. He didn't raise his head. "It won't rain here." He hardly had spoken when a strong gust of wind buffeted them. Chubuchu was standing at a turn in the mountain path and almost lost his footing. He was on the verge of being blown right off when Feng Xiao grabbed his shoulder and pulled him back, faster even than the Shu Yue guards beside him. Feng Xiao doesn't hesitate to mock him. "In my opinion, you should go back down the mountain and wait for us. You're nothing but a burden." Chubuchu paid him no heed. He squinted up the mountainside before pointing in another direction. "Let's go up there and take a look." Sure enough, the dark clouds were swiftly blown over to the neighboring peak. Rain fell in the west, but in the east the sun shone and the sky above their heads was bright and clear. How had Chubuchu cultivated such a skill? Feng Xiao was shocked he could accurately discern the weather from such a distance. Yeah, he's even better than the woodcutter who lives there. That's impressive. It was a hard road to their destination, and the climb was particularly agonizing for Chubuchu. His face was as white as paper, and he needed to rest every few steps. Feng Xiao was beginning to think the next gust might scatter him to the four winds. My question is, why isn't one of the Shu Yui guards carrying him? Or, like, helping support him? I know he has his pride, but, like, if you're trying to make it up the mountain and you know you have chronic illness and there are strong people around you, why would you not use what you are given? I'm just saying, like, I get that it's a rough climb, but I feel like they're martial artists. They could carry him up. Like, why do you have to struggle up this mountain? You are not like a monk on a quest to go get a blessed talisman and climb up all 1,000 steps, kowtowing every single one. Like, you do not have to climb this mountain to get to the treasure, like, by yourself. You could make this easier on yourself and then, like, wait till it's the difficult part and then walk on your own. I'm just saying. I'm sorry. I'm just like, there are simpler ways to be doing this, and you're being stubborn to be stubborn on principle. Rant over. Yes, I agree. He's got to suffer to earn his credentials as a Danmei protagonist. Maybe that's it, Annika. When they arrived, they discovered a cave entrance concealed beneath the luxuriant canopy of trees. The cave was deep. Even the glare of the summer sun couldn't penetrate the darkness. The clue Yuan Sensi had shared with them was many years old, and the woods now were much denser than in the painting. It should have been near impossible for anyone to tell at a glance if this spot was truly the hiding place of the Wei dynasty's secret treasure. How could you tell? Feng Xiao asked curiously. This mountain has a unique shape, said Chubuchu. He produced the little picture and pointed to the mountain within it, then pointed at his feet. Did you notice? Though the mountain is steep, the path we took was not. We encountered no danger on our way. Except when you almost fell off, Feng Xiao reminded him. Chubuchu turned a deaf ear and continued. On our way up, I noticed faint ruts in the stones of the path. evidence that it was built for the easy transport of building materials by soldiers and craftsmen. He asked the Shuyui guard to push aside the nearby stones and cut away some of the foliage screening the entrance. As they worked, he wiped away some of the sand on the ground with his foot, revealing a few deep grooves, too regular to be the result of wind or rain. Feng Xiao crouched down and ran his fingers over them. Deep and uniform, something was dragged across the ground. Oh, what if they get there and it's empty? Then are they going to go on a quest to find it? Just be like, all right, who took it? I guess we'll see. Oh, after this chapter, I'll read off the injustices. Chubuchu looked around. They must have searched for a long time before they found this place. It's halfway up a mountain, yet the surrounding terrain is gentle. They transported tools up the mountain and carved out the interior, then let the dense vegetation conceal the interior. It's difficult to discover. Even if passing woodcutters or hunters saw the cave entrance, they wouldn't be likely to enter. And if they were curious enough to go in, he paused, there's a high chance they wouldn't come back out. Feng Xiao arched a brow. Are you sure there's hidden treasure in such a small space? How would one even bring all the armor out through such a narrow entrance? Did Emperor Wei not consider such things? Perhaps Yuan Sensi deceived you. Chubachu shook his head. I've had Yuan Sensi's background thoroughly investigated. There's no mistake. Something's inside. Let's go take a look. The Shuyui guards led the way. Chubuchu had set to rolling up his sleeves in preparation for entering when Feng Xiao suddenly grabbed his wrist, his gaze flickering with something obscure. You can wait for us outside. Look how sickly you are. Won't I just waste my energy saving you? All right, there's two ways for that. Either he's actually being protective, or more likely, he's up to a hijink where he says, I found it. I get the greater percentage. You can wait outside for us. Look how sickly you are. Won't I just waste my energy saving you? With a sigh, Chubuchu said, do you think I'm going in there just to be a burden? There are undoubtedly hidden traps inside. I might not be an expert on traps, but I know a thing or two. Without me, it won't matter how powerful a martial artist you are. You won't make it out unscathed. Feng Xiao's usual languid smile quickly returned. He leaned in, closing the distance between them. Taoist Master Chu, are you worried about me? I am, said Chubuchu indifferently. After all, keeping Deputy Chief Feng alive is crucial to my safety on the way back. The Shuyui guards had already disappeared into the mouth of the cave. Chubuchu turned away and followed suit. The moment he entered, the air pressed in on him, gloomy and damp, as if he'd stepped into another world entirely. The darkness was so complete that he couldn't see his own hand in front of his face, and the ground under his feet was slick with moisture. If he wasn't careful, he'd slip and fall. Squinting ahead, he called out, Don't touch the walls! Okay, so before I start the next chapter, injustice counts. Okay. Injustice to service workers is sitting at 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 32, with a singular justice to service workers. Injustice to animals and plants is sitting at 5. Our injustice to innocence is at 15, with a half point to justice to innocence. Injustice to Peijing Z is at 13, with 1 injustice to readers. Our shamelessness counter is at a rather impressive 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 52. which is rather impressive. All right. Quick sip, then we start. Okay. Chapter 111 is 4815. Okay. 111. Try to stay in the middle. Don't touch the walls, Chubachu repeated. What is that? The lichen-covered walls sparkled with silver, captivating yet uncanny. Feng Xiao studied them by the light of the torch one of the guards carried. It's quite beautiful. It's a residue produced by the caterpillars of the silver dust butterfly, said Chubachu. The butterflies live in the dark, and the silver scales on their wings glow. Though their bodies aren't poisonous, the scales on their wings are. Are they commonly found in damp caves? Chubachu saw what he was getting at. He shook his head before remembering Feng Xiao was up ahead and couldn't see him. Silver dust butterflies are usually found in the southwest, he murmured. They're rare here in the north, but they live in swamps and their lifespans are short. I doubt there's more of them after this passage. Then this was only the first trap. This toxic silver dust was likely nothing compared to the dangers that lurked ahead. A rush of damp, stale air hit Chubachu full in the face and made him cough. Hua Chong making a cameo. Yep, Hua Chong making a cameo. There you go. Good pick, Inika. A rush of damp, stale air hit Chubachu full in the face and made him cough. The sound echoed through the corridor, bouncing back at him from the far walls. As they walked, the ground beneath his feet gradually leveled out and was no longer as slippery. His bamboo walking stick thudded dully against the stone, the sound reverberating through their hearts like that of a monk striking a temple block. They reached the end of the passage, and the cave opened up before them. Vines dangled from above, so low that they could almost reach up to touch them. I feel like that'd be a bad idea, considering the poisonous butterflies that are lining the walls. A gentle draft was blowing in from somewhere, caressing their cheeks with the damp cold of the cave. Chubachu scented danger. He looked down at his feet. The light of the torch revealed the stone tiles to be free of lichen. Beneath the scattering of dust and sand were engraved patterns, resplendent peonies and intricate lotus vines. Treasure troves like these were usually no more than fanciful contingency plans left by an emperor for his descendants. Well, the butterflies got the poison from somewhere. That's fair. There was no need to go to the trouble of paving the floor and carving the tiles with patterns. Clearly, Emperor Wei hadn't intended this cave to be merely a storehouse for relics. He must have anticipated that if his descendants one day needed to flee here, they would temporarily... He froze. Back up! Feng Xiao reacted first. He leapt backward, grabbing Chubachu's arm and hauling him back with him. The Shuoyui guards were a half step too slow. One felt a cold wind bearing down on his head. An instant before, sharp agony pierced his nose. Sharp blade shot up from the tiles, slicing off the tip of the man's nose. Blood misted the air. Quick again, Feng Xiao struck several acupoints on the man's body to stop the bleeding, then held up the torch to take a closer look. It's not poisoned. The wound looked horrific, but they'd brought medicine for incised wounds. The other Shuoyui guard swiftly bandaged his companion, but the tip of his nose was gone for good. I see we're at the Indiana Jones part of the story. Yes, we are, Truffle. I say that's an injustice to service workers, because dude just got his nose cut off. Like, not because of anybody, but just because of the cave, and I feel like that's an injustice to him. So, 33. You leave first, said Chubachu. Go down the mountain and wait for us there. He got the Voldemort treatment. I do find it interesting that Chubachu is the first going first in this picture. Like, I get it, but also it's Chubachu. Like, really? The sickly, chronically ill one is the one that's going first? I get that he's smart, but just like interesting choice. I do like how stately he looks, though. The injured Shuyue guard refused. Lord Chief, it is only a flesh wound. It won't hamper my performance. Feng Xiao didn't involve himself in their conversation. He dropped to the floor and marveled at the sharp blade peeking out from the stone tile. A blade this sharp must have been forged using ancient methods. When we head back, remind me to take it with us. I'll have it reforged into a new sword. It'll be better than the one I used on Foer. But how did you know it was a trap? The tiles look similar, but they're set at different heights. The differences are regular. Chubachu walked over and placed his hand on a tile patterned with lotus vines, then slowly traced a path in a clockwise direction. Look, if we start with this tile, they get lower and lower. Then here they return to their original height. Feel for yourself. Monty Python reference. I'm not touching that. The ground is filthy. Just tell me. Chubachu silently willed away the vein throbbing on his forehead. I've seen this kind of trap before. The pattern is a warning to those who belong here. But trespassers won't recognize it, so they'll be caught. Feng Xiao fanned himself. There's no rhyme or reason to know how the patterns are arranged. I trust this was done to mislead trespassers as well. Correct. Chubuchu looked at Feng Xiao in irritation. It's freezing in here. Can you stop waving that fan around? Feng Xiao studied Chubuchu's face, which was as white as snow. He shook his head. It's not too late for you to leave, he mocked, but he snapped the fan shut. Next came the sound of dripping, followed by the patter of water over their heads. An ethereal mist descended from above. As Feng Xiao stepped into the drizzle, a shapeless barrier of qi knocked the water away. His clothes remained dry. Rain in a cave. He poked at the mist with his fan. It's not poisonous gas, is it? Chubuchu shook his head. There was dense fog around the mountain earlier. There must be another floor above, and that's where the exit is. If I'm not mistaken, the current floor is filled with traps as a deterrent, while the second floor will hold the treasure. The passage should be up ahead. The Shuoyui guard's wounds had stopped bleeding, and he insisted on staying. Chubuchu didn't order him to leave, so the group continued onward as four. This time, Chubuchu took the lead. Wasn't he taking the lead before, or was that just like when he was telling them? I guess it was just when he was telling them. He proceeded with excruciating slowness, pausing to observe after every step. The injured Shuyui guard took up the rear, his companion ahead of him. They could, of course, have used Qinggong to fly ahead. It would have been faster, but there was no guarantee they wouldn't land in another trap. Chubuchu's approach took much longer, but it was also much safer. The hanging vines grew lower and lower, blocking their view. The Shuyui guard stepped to the front to push them aside. Stalagmites of various sizes rose from the ground. From this, they could guess that the cave was likely a natural one. A vast and empty cave like this had infinite potential. It was large enough to house many people, perhaps even an entire royal battalion. No wonder Emperor Wei had claimed it as a secret refuge. In such a silent cave, even the subtle rustling of leaves might set one on edge. Chubachu's persistent coughs accompanied them, yet somehow the sound soothed them instead. This wasn't the Shuyui Guard's first mission. They were experienced men who had encountered their fair share of unexpected situations. The guard in front didn't let his anxiety show. He simply followed Feng Xiao around a stalagmite. There was a bend in the path up ahead and a faint glimmer of light. An exit? He was delighted, but at that moment he heard a low groan from the guard behind him. He jerked around and found nothing but empty space. "Lord Chief!" he cried. "Jiang Song is gone!" No response. Chu Chu and Feng Xiao, too, had disappeared. The shocked guard turned the corner, but there was still no sign of any of his companions. Even the light seemed to have been an illusion. Before him was the same deep and endless darkness. A passage leading to who knew where. The only light came from the torch he held. After walking so long, the torch was nearly spent. The flame guttered feebly, like an old man struggling to catch his breath, fading away until the darkness finally took him. Everything went black. The guard reached into his lapels for another torch, but before his fingers touched it, an unseen force seized his body. It was as if he'd stepped into quicksand. First, his feet were trapped, then the rest of him was dragged down into the dark. Bum, bum, bum! Chubachu was still standing in place. He hadn't moved, he hadn't fallen, and he hadn't walked too far ahead. In truth, he'd noticed something amiss the moment he'd gone around the first stalagmite. That sense of wrongness hadn't Chubachu was still sorry. Hang on, I lost my place. Chubachu was still standing in place. He hadn't moved. He hadn't fallen, and he hadn't walked too far ahead. In truth, he'd noticed something amiss the moment he'd gone around the first stalagmite. That sense of wrongness hadn't been based on any perceived threat. It was no more than a faint niggling something he couldn't put his finger on. He'd forged ahead, hoping to spot more clues as they went. Stalagmites thronged like trees in the cave. The torch had been unable to illuminate them all, but even within the small halo of its light, he could see that there'd been many. Was the problem with the stalagmites? He frowned slightly, a rare trace of doubt surfacing on his features. It was unfortunate Feng Xiao was behind him and couldn't see. By now, he'd reached the fourth stalagmite. "I think there might be a problem with the stalagmites," he called to the man behind him. But Feng Xiao didn't respond. He whirled around. The other three were gone. Chubachu sighed. So his hunch had been right. He supported himself against the stalagmite for a moment, recalling how the cave had looked when he had first entered. "I made a mistake," he muttered. He'd assumed each trap was separated and self-contained. There'd been no connection between the silver dust butterflies and the stone tile traps, which seemed to have confirmed his guess. But in truth, the moment they'd entered the cave, they'd stepped into a single enormous trap. An Ursa Major twin jade array. Oh, that's a mouthful. Let me repeat that. An Ursa Major twin jade array. Fancy. As the name suggested, this array was patterned after the 7 stars forming the constellation Ursa Major. 7 traps had been laid around them, and the moment they interacted with one, they'd find themselves snared within a sub-array nearby. While he'd been so focused on avoiding the tile trap, he'd stepped into the sub-array formed by the stalagmites. Right now, the 4 of them weren't far away from each other. But as long as they were trapped in the array, they might as well be on opposite ends of the earth. They were completely out of reach, like the distant light of the stars. The current Ursa Major subarray was based on one of the four endgame components in the strategy game of Xiangqi, known as the Gathering of Seven Stars. Even if someone could tell this array was no ordinary one, if they didn't know the principles of its composition, they'd be rats in a trap, only able to wallow in despair. It didn't matter who you were, young or old, alive or dead, anyone caught in the array would find themselves unable to leave. At this moment, Chubuchu had no way to save the others. He could only focus on saving himself. He closed his eyes, casting his mind back to the solution of this particular endgame composition. Deep within his memory, Chubuchu found a door slightly ajar. What would await him if he opened that door? Chubuchu tossed away the torch he was holding. He gripped his bamboo walking stick and placed his other hand on the stalagmite, then slowly groped his way forward. After a few steps, he backed up again, circling around to a nearby stalagmite and starting the process anew. Anyone watching would have thought him wandering around aimlessly, but as he fumbled about in the dark, he slowly began to make his way out of the array. When he next opened his eyes, a glimmer of light greeted him, a flickering candle flame that melted away the chill of a cave. Chubuchu looked behind him and saw nothing but darkness. Feng Xiao and the two guards were still trapped within the array. Should he continue forward, or should he wade back in and find them? Chubuchu turned back around, ready to head back into the array. Since you're out now, why go back in? The Chubuchu I know isn't so soft-hearted. The voice came from behind him. Other than their party of four, there shouldn't have been anyone else in the cave. Yet that voice was acutely familiar. Chubuchu whipped around. The figure of a man stood near the candles beside the entrance. His silhouette was blurred, his face impossible to make out. But Chubuchu could never fail to recognize that voice. After all, they'd spoken not long ago. Yuan Sen-si, Chubuchu whispered. To think it was you. Dun, dun, dun! Oh, where's my pen? How's the sound quality, by the way? Sounding good? Looking good. Sounds good? Awesome. Yes. I love it when it sounds nice. Okay. $106. No, we'll just do 107. Okay. Chapter 112. Yuan Sensi ambled over to him, surprised. Chubuchu was honest. I was, at first, but now that I think about it, it makes sense. Yuan Sensi looked somewhat surprised himself. Why do you say so? Your appearance was too convenient. Just as I returned to Boling, you happened to be transferred there as the new commandery governor. Upon returning to the Chu family, I'd have to address those old affairs. You being the commandery governor, in addition to Lady Yu's Shixian, would make me lower my guard, and I'd be content to trust in the results of my own investigations. Your background wasn't difficult to trace. You knew the Shuoyui Bureau would eventually find you and ask about the location of the treasure. But if you came to me yourself, you could control the situation, and I'd have less cause to be suspicious. Dun, dun, dun! I had heard Chief Chu had a heart of steel, but it still softened when you met an old friend of your late mother. No need to be so modest, said Chubachu coolly. I wasn't soft-hearted. You were clever. Seeing Chubachu was actually cupping his hands at him, Yuan Sanzi couldn't help but laugh. Chief Chu is truly amazing. Right now, Chubachu was meat on the chopping block. He knew no martial arts, and this was Yuan Sanzi's territory. He was utterly powerless, but Yuan Sanzi seemed to hold some fondness for him still. His tone was pleasant, and he had yet to attack. Okay, I'm glad. Yesterday it was super windy, so I'm not surprised that the quality was a little less. Today it's not as much. But behind Chubuchu lay that dark and oppressive array. Feng Xiao and the two guards had yet to emerge. So it was a fake identity? Asked Chubuchu. Yuan Sensi shook his head. It was real. I really am your mother's Shixian, and the Yu family was very kind to me. Your grandfather accepted me into the Yu residence and took great pains to teach me. When I left, I felt conflicted and troubled by the burden of my past. I wanted to chart my own path. I didn't want to follow the one your grandfather set out for me, to study, to marry, and to spend the rest of my life just this way. I felt guilty toward Lady Yu, but I had to leave. No, you're good, Truffle. Is it your birthday coming up? Is that what birthday list you're making? Because if so, happy almost birthday. He sighed, lost in memory. Oh, I traveled the world. I saw many novel sights and had many novel experiences. It sent me down a completely different path. Had I stayed with the Yu family, I have no doubt I would have lived a life of utter mediocrity. I'd never have tasted true success. And the 13 floors of Yunhai gave you the chance to exercise your potential? Yuan Sansi smiled. You're wrong, Xianzi. So, virtuous nephew. A spiteful address for the son of one's friend. Xianzi. The 13 floors of Yunhai didn't exist back then, and they're not so wicked as you imagine. Anything you want, they can give you. Oh, it's coming up! It's coming up, Truffle. You'll have to let us know when it is so we can say happy birthday then, too. I want you dead. Can they give me this? Yuan Sansi shrugged. You are a rare genius. You're not like the unwashed masses who waste their time on pointless debates. I know you have many questions. Once you receive the answers, perhaps you'll change your mind. It's not impossible. Then I shall wait for your silver tongue to work its magic. Yuan Sensi chuckled at his sarcastic tone. Standing in the light of the candles, he regarded Chubuchu, still shrouded in darkness, as one might an ignorant child. An unarmed child at that. Even if he had a tongue sharper than the world's swiftest sword, it was a tongue and no more. Yeah, book prioritization is a difficult decision. Out of curiosity, what are like your top 5 picks? Standing in the light of no. Even if he had a tongue sharper than the world's swiftest sword, it was a tongue and no more. To Yuan Sansi, Chubuchu was an infant before a butcher's knife. No matter how many schemes he had up his sleeve, none of them could help him now. Besides, Yuan Sansi considered himself a prudent man. If he'd been all sparkle and no substance, the Yu family wouldn't have been so fond of him. Lady Yu, a woman as sharp as winter frost, wouldn't have agreed to marry him. But even Lady Yu had failed to grasp the extent of Yuan Sensi's ambition. His sights had always been set higher than that shabby plot of land known as Bow Lane. In truth, Yuan Sensi said, the 13 floors of Yunhai are capable of far more than you could ever dream. But that aside, I have to ask, did you realize we already met in the capital? Chubachu's expression shifted. Backlit by the candle's hazy glow, Yuan Sansi raised a hand and mimicked flourishing a sword. With his perfect memory, the motion alone was enough for Chubachu to recall. The Thousand Lantern Banquet during the Dragon Boat Festival, Princess Li Ping's Qing Li Garden, buried lamp oil, a failed assassination, and rebellion. As he spoke each word, his voice was deliberate. Yuan Sansi smiled. Correct. The person in white who lurked beneath the carriage and fought Feng Xiao. That was me. You didn't realize? I went easy on you that night. Considering my skill, how else could I have failed to kill you? Man, he really cares about his martial nephew, doesn't he? Or like his he has interesting priorities. Let me just put it that way. Rather straightforward, but also twisted, if that makes sense. Like, you can tell where he's coming from, but also just like. Anyway. When Yuan Sensi had left the Yu family, he truly must have had some unparalleled experiences. The duel that night had proved him to be stronger than Foer. He was Feng Xiao's equal, if not his superior. Many things now made sense. Yuan Sensi was a martial artist, but he'd pretended to be a lawful citizen and trodden the slow road to becoming a court official. Husky Special Edition, I like the new translation of 12 Kingdoms, copper coins and 300 years of longing. Ooh, it's a good list. The Yuan clan was an influential surname in the north, and after the collapse of the Wei dynasty, many Yuans had gone on to become officials in succeeding dynasties. Yuan Sensi was but one of them. Dynasties had changed again and again throughout the centuries. Emperors would never reject a talented official just because their clan had once sat upon the imperial throne. According to regulation, when an official is transferred, the emperor would summon them to the capital for debriefing. Before heading to Bowling Commandery, Yuan Sensi had gone through that exact process, and he'd made use of the opportunity. Ostensibly, he'd returned to the capital as part of his duties, but he'd secretly been in contact with the rebels. He was known as a rising official. It wasn't hard for him to obtain an invitation to Qingli Garden. No one noticed when a guest slipped away in the middle of the banquet to hide beneath a carriage. Ooh, Disabled God of War is really good. It's a little slow at the beginning. Yeah, no, that's kind of where my rambling a little bit ago went, where I can't tell if Chubuchu matters to him or not. I feel like he feels like he's supposed to care, but he doesn't actually care. Like, he's supposed to feel obligated, but he's like, yeah, no. No one had noticed when a guest slipped away in the middle of the banquet to hide beneath a carriage. Yuan Sensi was both a brilliantly ambitious man and a peerless martial artist. He'd maintained two identities and stood at the pinnacle of the Jianghu. No wonder he'd thought the plain and ordinary Yu family beneath him. If he'd gone easy on Chubuchu and Feng Xiao that night, it was only so he could show off. And today, he hadn't exposed himself to Chubuchu merely to tell him his life was in Yuan Sensi's hands. He meant to impress upon him the sheer power of the 13 floors. A group of rebels the Shuyu Bureau should have eliminated had freely entered Qingli Garden and made an attempted attack on the guests. Of course, they were capable of even more. Oh, I think I know the Murderbot series. It's been a long time since the collapse of the Wei dynasty, Chubachu said slowly. And the current emperor isn't the one who vanquished Wei. Why take revenge on him? Yuan Sanxi shook his head. I'm not out for revenge. Xianzi, you think too little of me. To the 13 floors of Yunhai, the entire world is a chessboard and all living beings but pieces upon it. If you join us, you'll learn much more. The corners of Chubachu's mouth curled. Are they not simply planning to usurp the throne? Why make it sound so noble? I'm afraid you have no skill in persuasion. Surely your leader is more convincing than you are. Where is he? If he comes, perhaps I'll consider it. Yuan Sanxi smiled. Why would we require Yi Xiansheng's presence? We have another distinguished guest you haven't seen in some time. He's missed you dearly, so I invited him here so the two of you can reminisce. He gestured toward the candlelight spilling out from a nearby doorway, an invitation for Chubachu to enter. I do appreciate sarcasm, if you haven't already picked up on that. um, my three friends are still in the array, said Chubachu. If your aim is to win me over, shouldn't you release them? Worry not, said Yuan Sensi. They're all safe and sound. You'll be able to see them later. It seemed that even Feng Xiao had been captured. Chubachu frowned slightly. For the first time in his life, he felt things were spiraling out of control. He suspected he wouldn't be pleased to meet whoever waited in that room. He straightened and tossed away the bamboo walking stick. He had enough light to see by and no longer needed it. He walked steadily forward, step by step. Once past Yuan Shenxi, he could see into the chamber. The room was bright and clean. The night pearls inlaid in the walls glowed faintly. It hadn't been candlelight after all. A man sat with his back to him, legs crossed on a cattail mat. He was indeed familiar. So familiar, Chubachu could no longer maintain his cold, hardened expression. His shock was starkly visible in his eyes. Yuan Sensi smiled faintly. The man turned around. His hair was the color of snow, his robes such a clean white that they seemed to shine. His face still showed vestiges of the handsomeness of his youth, and his smile was warm and familiar. He waved at Chubachu. Good gracious, how did you torment yourself into this state? Your complexion's even worse than I remember. His tone was chiding, that of an elder scolding his disciple after the latter's long absence. But Chubachu's blood had turned to ice. He stood for a long time, unmoving and silent. The man didn't prompt him, but patiently waited for his response. At last, Chubachu walked in and sat on the cattail mat. He got right to the point. I didn't expect it to be you, Xiansheng. Fan Yun gave him a kindly smile. If you had been able to guess, I wouldn't deserve to be called your Xiansheng. I remember you told me you hate being bound, that you wish to drift free like the clouds or the wild geese, that even though Liu Li Palace recruited you, you only accepted the position of consultant so that you could come and go as you please. Correct, said Fan Yun. That is indeed what I said. You said you're a descendant of the famous Prime Minister Fan Zhu, and your lifelong wish is to abide by the teachings of the Fan clan, to find an enlightened ruler to lead the world, bring peace and prosperity to all. Oof. Poor Chubuchu. And totally not psychopathic. Oh, for a second I thought my tea spilled. I'm gonna show Chubachu's face. Poor Chubachu. And then his Xiansheng. He is shook. You said you're a descendant of the famous Prime Minister Fan Zhu, and your lifelong wish is to abide by the teachings of the Fan clan, to find an enlightened ruler to lead this world, bringing peace and prosperity to all. I said that too, Fan Yun smiled, and that's just what I've been doing. Chu Chu laughed, a cold, sneering sound. I can't see how the 13 floors of Yunhai, a shameless parasite that skulks in the dark, can be more worthy of leading than Yang Jian. Fan Yun shook his head. It's been a long time since our last meeting, but your personality is as sharp as ever. But that can be a double-edged sword, if the blade's too sharp. Sometimes when you cut others, you cut yourself too. Now that his initial shock had passed, Chubachu's face had returned to its usual smooth tranquility. Even Fan Yun couldn't tell what he was thinking. No wonder, Chubachu said. From the moment I entered this place, I felt it was familiar. The Ursa Major Twin Jade Array was a formation you personally taught me. You told me once that very few could deploy this array, and those capable of escaping it are fewer still. Was the story about the treasure all part of your scheme? No, the treasure is real. Emperor Wei built this place to give his descendants a way to defend themselves if need arose. But we emptied it long ago. Chubachu glanced back at Yuan Sanxi with a smile quite unlike a smile. So he donated the wealth of his entire clan and became a lackey who lurks undercover among his enemies. He spent so long as an official, too. Yuan Shibo is truly a man of great achievements. Yuan Sanxi was thick-skinned. He merely replied courteously, You flatter me, Xian Zi. So he called him Marshal Uncle for the Xiang, Shi Xiang, Shi Xiang of one's master. I don't know why I'm struggling with that tonight. I usually can say it. Seeing them like this, any observer might have thought the three were sitting harmoniously together, happily discussing poetry and essays rather than the fate of empires. Dun dun dun! Alright, 126:15. One 13. Fan Yun still vividly remembered that gloomy day. A misty rain had been falling from the sky as he sat alone by the roadside, conducting divinations beneath a thatched roof, when a young man in coarse clothes had approached him. He had closed his broken umbrella and sat down opposite Fan Yun. But Fan Yun was immersed in the small array he'd laid out with wooden sticks. He ignored the newcomer. Nan Chen is on my list, as you guys saw before, but I haven't had a chance to read it. I know people really like it. The stranger watched for a while before speaking. You should add a defensive line at the position of Shun. Shun, or a trigram, represents wind, or representing wind. In the latter heaven, Bagua, used for living beings, Shun was in the southeast. Fan Yun was holding a wooden stick in his hand, about to place it at Shun. Surprised that the young man's thoughts so neatly matched his own, he finally raised his head to get a look at him. You've studied divination? The young man shook his head. I've merely read The Six Yin of the Sublime Grotto by Huang Shigong, but there were many parts I failed to understand. He'd read the book with incomplete understanding, yet he'd already achieved this level of skill. Geniuses really did exist. Fan Yun had a fondness for talented people. He examined the young man's sickly complexion and his listless air, then shook his head. You're fated to achieve great things, yet you find yourself beset by constant misfortune. Crises atop crises, danger atop danger. This is especially hard on your family and friends. The closer someone is to you, the more they will suffer. The young man was unruffled. It is as you say, but I don't believe in fate. You're young and energetic now, said Fan Yun. You believe the will of man can overcome the will of the heavens. What you don't yet know is that one's fate is a difficult thing to change. I've never thought of changing my fate, the young man said mildly. I simply don't believe in it. What the heavens wish to do to me is their business. What path I choose to walk is mine. There's no connection between the two. Fan Yun had never met anyone like this young man before. Everyone he'd ever known either strongly believed in fate or and organized their life around it, looking for good luck while running from the bad, taking care in everything they did, or had been resolute in rejecting its influence. But this man did neither. He simply refused to cooperate. That sounds pretty in line with Chubuchu's character. What fate would befall a person like that? Suddenly Fan Yun was interested. What's your name? What do you do for a living? Chubuchu. I do business, trading with my foster father. He passed away last month. Why not come with me? The arts, astrology, geography, writing, and divination. I can teach you all these subjects and many more. I won't become anyone's disciple. That's fine. A look of nostalgia came over Fan Yun as he recalled the past. Though not in name, you were master and disciple in all ways that matter. You're one of the most talented men I've ever met. If your health hadn't prevented you from learning martial arts, you'd probably be a practitioner on par with Yuan Sansi. Yuan Sansi laughed at being used as a benchmark. No one is perfect, as the saying goes. Xianzi became the Shuyue Bureau's chief at such an extremely young age, and Dugu Chie Luo views him as her confidant. He's already a titan. If he were as skilled with the sword as he is with the pen, even the heavens would grow jealous. The more amiable they pretended to be, the more warning bells rang in Chubuchu's heart. Fan Yun could have come to Chubuchu at any time and spoken these words if he wanted to recruit him. But that would have been too mundane a method and far less effective than what they were doing now. Setting a trap and waiting for Chubuchu to fall into it, wearing down his morale, then offering him rewards and appealing to sentiment. The appearance of Fan Yun and Yuan Sansi was surely only the beginning. The 13 floors of Yunhai must have more tricks up their sleeve. Something was lurking at the back of Chubuchu's mind, eager to come to the forefront. He squashed it. Since you wish you to recruit me, shouldn't you do the same for my 3 companions? He asked flatly. I think there's a typo there. Since you wish you to recruit me, shouldn't you do the same for my 3 companions? I think there's an extra you in that. Yuan Sensi's lips curved in a knowing smile. He looked at Chubuchu for a long moment before answering. There's no rush. Chubuchu frowned. It was a fleeting motion, gone in an instant, but Yuan Sensi drew the obvious conclusion. The chief of the Shuyui Bureau, a man of relentless logic and reason, was finally experiencing a rare moment of uncertainty. From the minute he'd set foot in Boling, it had been inevitable. Yuan Sensi smiled softly. He looked forward to seeing Chubuchu's expression when he realized the truth. Oh boy. Fan Yun was still speaking. Buchu, you were blessed with an immense talent for administration, practically the reincarnation of Zhang Liang himself. A great military strategist and politician from the early Western Han dynasty, seen as one of their three great heroes. Would it not be a pity to limit yourself to leading the Shuoyue Bureau? Perhaps Yan Jian values your talent, but he doesn't see you as a pillar of his nation the way he does his prime minister and generals. If he did, you'd be part of the Department of State Affairs by now. You were born frail and have suffered your entire life. If you continue to exhaust yourself with all this plotting and running about, you'll die before your time. Uh, he does that of his free will. Like, no one can stop him from going on these trips. They would love it if he stayed in the capital and was an administrator and worked behind the scenes. They would beg and plead for that, I imagine. Chubuchu lowered his lashes, concealing his eyes from Fan Yun. Even ants strove to stay alive. No one was willing to die, especially not someone like Chubuchu, who held such immense authority. I think that was actually Yuan. Oh, maybe. They they had it as you. YOU. If one lost their life, what good was authority? What are the goals of the 13 floors of Yunhai? If there is someone you wish to make emperor, at least let me meet him so I can judge how capable he is for myself, said Shubichu. You'll find out once you join us, said Fan Yun. Didn't you come up against Duan Chi Hu and Xiaomo? He dominated the Northwest for decades and was a man of great ability, yet even he only ranked 12th. And what about you, Xian Sheng? What rank do you and Yuan Sanxi hold? Fan Yun didn't keep him in suspense. Yuan Sanxi is 4th, Xian Sheng. I am 3rd, San Xian Sheng. Go Un, the leader of the Bu Yue sect, who died at the hands of the Jijian Bureau's deputy chief Fang, was 5th, Wu Xiansheng. Two mighty talents, yet you rank only 3rd and 4th. If I join the 13 floors, I fear they'll give me Duan Chi Hu's empty seat and no more. Fan Yun smiled. Yuan Sanxi and I personally came to recruit you. That shows how much our pavilion pavilion leader esteems you. Butterfly leader? Pavilion leader esteems you. If you join us, he'll give you a rank higher than us old men, not lower. The 13 floors overflow with talents, and the scale on which they operate is far beyond what you imagine. You've experienced it yourself. You went to such pains to eradicate Duan Chi Hu, and the Su dynasty declared it a great achievement. But for the 13 floors of Yunhai, Duan Chi Hu was no more than a disposable chess piece. Jubuchu smiled. Not only did I eradicate Duan Chi Hu, I also rooted out the Prince of Jin's confidant, Yu Xiu, not to mention his double, Yu Hang. There's also the leader of the Bu Yio sect, Go Un. You lost a great many men to me during the rebellion at Qingli Garden, and yet you're accepting me with open arms. I fear I'll suffer your vengeance if I join. There's no need to worry about that, said Fan Yun. I called Duan Shihu disposable, but that Go Un was something else. Leading the Bu Yio sect made him arrogant. He often disobeyed orders. He was also a Gogieron, a foreigner. That man couldn't be trusted. You did us a favor by removing him. We needed someone more trustworthy to take over the Bu Yio sect, and now they will. Studying Fan Yun's brightly smiling face, Chu heart sank. But Chu, Fan Yun patiently continued, you're a clever person. Upstanding men should speak frankly. I've strongly recommended you to the pavilion leader, and he admires you greatly as well. Compared to that two-faced hypocrite Yan Jian, I believe the pavilion leader would make a better emperor. He's a broad-minded man with extraordinary abilities. He won't hold a grudge over what you've done until now. In fact, he admires the clear-minded ruthlessness with which you face down your enemies. You merely served your master loyally, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you're willing to join us, what's past will be forgiven, written off in a single stroke. So I didn't guess wrong, said Chubuchu. Fan Yun was taken aback. What? You do resent Yang Jian. Fan Yun hesitated, then sneered. Yang Jian has thousands of enemies. Whether I number among them makes little difference. But you are my disciple. I won't harm you. Considering that I am here now, I fear it no longer matters whether or not I am willing. Do you remember the first time we met and I divined your fate by reading your face? Yang Jian's fate is that of a king. He was born into luxury, yet his features tell me he won't meet his end from old age or illness, but some other misfortune. The imperial court is at its peak now, but it too has an inauspicious future. As prosperous as the Sioux are today, they share the fate of Yang Jian. They won't continue beyond the second generation. Yang Jian is destined to end his life in desolation, and his descendants will fare no better. You learned almost every discipline while at my side. The only one you refused to study was divination. Still, you were exposed to it every day. You can't have failed to pick up some things. You must know I speak the truth. In that case, Xiansheng's new master must be a dragon and phoenix among men, blessed from birth with the fate of becoming emperor. Fan Yun nodded. He is. The pavilion leader is not just a master of pen and sword. It is his fate to be a dragon soaring among the heavens in immeasurable glory. Chu was growing tired of this talk. After a moment's silence, he heaved a sigh. Since we've come this far, Xiansheng, I'll be blunt. If I wanted to join the 13 floors of Yunhai, what kind of application would I need to submit? If you want me to assassinate Yang Jian, I fear it's impossible. Fan Yun had been waiting for just this question. He smiled. Yang Jian will of course be dealt with. Your help is not needed there. However, Yang Jian's wife, Lady Dugu, is unyielding, no less so than a man. Even if we eliminate Yang Jian, she'll be a threat to us as long as she remains alive. Dugu treats you implicitly. You have more opportunities to get close to her than anyone else. This is where you will lend us a hand, becoming the bridge by which we reach her. Once this matter is concluded, I will apply to the pavilion leader and nominate you for the position of deputy leader. You will rank above everyone else and answer only to him. When he ascends the throne, you'll be a king in all but name. Won't you then be able to enjoy a far more carefree life? Those who treat you callously, like the Chu family, will beat their chests and weep in remorse. These are empty promises, Chubushu said calmly. You know they aren't enough to tempt me. Fan Yun smiled. Then what about a rare treasure that can repair your body? The Jade of Heaven Lake. Chubuchu frowned. Fan Yun glanced toward Yuan Sanxi, who stood and went over to the stone wall, his hand groping among the night pearls inlaid in its surface. The ground rumbled, and the tile beneath his foot sank. He bent to the ground and produced a small box from a hidden recess. Yuan Sanxi pulled back the lid. In the center, nestled on a bed of thick brocade, was an object. A stone as clear as crystal, shimmering in the dim light. You've seen the Jade of Heaven Lake with your own eyes, said Fan Yun. You must know the object before you is authentic. Though this stone cannot completely cure your illness, it can prolong your life by several decades. This is the greatest gesture of sincerity I can offer. Feng Xiao had long since turned over the Jade of Heaven Lake to the imperial court. How could it be here? If some mishap had occurred during transport, or if someone had stolen it from the palace after it arrived, Chupu would have heard about it. Yet this jade was the genuine article. He could clearly remember its texture, size, and shape. It was impossible for a second identical stone to exist. Even the interior of the stone was the same, with the pool of icy blue-green at its center. There could only be one explanation: a traitor. Someone who had been working against him ever since they'd arrived in Boling, or perhaps even earlier. Feng Xiao, whispered Chubuchu. Ooh! Either we have a misunderstanding, or the plot thickens! Okay. $144.15. All right, chapter 114. Chubuchu gazed at the jade of Heaven Lake, and Fan Yun looked at him. Buchu, you're very talented. To die at such a young age, after only living a few short years, will this not be a pity? Your ambitions, your aspirations, stretch far beyond your current position. Everyone believes leading the Shuoyoi Bureau at your age is already a difficult and lofty achievement, but to you, it's hardly worth mentioning. You and I are the same. Man, they really are giving him the hard sell. That they are, Truffle. We use people as chess pieces. Attitudes, trends, situations, events, these are things for us to play with. Perhaps you care nothing for fame and reputation, but without your life, what can you achieve? Fan Yun coaxed him along, pleasant yet tireless. This was the same tone with which he'd taught Chubuchu in the past. The student had always been quick on the uptake, only needing to see one case to understand three. He believed this time would be no different. Chubuchu was sure to make the wisest choice. But Chubuchu remained silent. Wouldn't it be funny if it was actually the pay guy? That would be a twist, Truffle. I'm kind of wanting it to be Pei Jingzi. I didn't even think about that, but now I really, really, really want it to be Pei Jingzi. But Chubuchu remained silent. Fan Yun waited patiently. To turn traitor and plot a rebellion against one's sovereign was not a decision to be made lightly. That's putting it lightly. Most would be terrified out of their wits at merely hearing such an idea. He probably got sick of all the injustices, right? To turn traitor and plot a rebellion against one's sovereign was not a decision to be made lightly. Most would be terrified out of their wits at merely hearing such an idea. Chibuchu was an extraordinary man, but even so, Fan Yun and Yuan Sanxi would have found it suspicious if he agreed too readily. At length, Chubuchu said, I want to see Feng Xiao. Fan Yun showed no surprise at his request. He smiled. Surely you've already guessed how the jade came to be here? Are you so certain of Feng Xiao? Or are you unable to accept your deductions? Chubuchu's face was indifferent. Words are easily spoken. I'll trust the evidence of my eyes. Fan Yun sighed. Do you not understand? He has joined the 13 floors of Yunhai. Will you refuse to give up until the truth is staring you in the face? I've never seen you this concerned over someone else's loyalties. whether he betrayed Yang Jian and joined the 13 floors of Yunhai. Is that so important to you? It's very important. Fan Yu nodded. Very well. He turned to Yuan Sensi. I must trouble Yuan Xiang. Please summon the deputy leader. Yuan Sensi turned and left. Deputy leader? Asked Chupachu. I know the Shuuyue Bureau has done their due diligence investigating the 13 floors, but I don't imagine you know that our pavilion leader, Yi Xiansheng, appoints 2 deputy leaders. These deputies have great authority. They need only give the word, and they can mobilize all connections and resources belonging to the floors 2 through 12, regardless of location. No one would dare disobey. True, if they had a boss like Feng Xiao, turning traitor might be easy. All connections and resources regardless of location. Zhu Chu turned these words over in his mind, and his expression grew thoughtful. Then I was right. Lin Yong of Yandang Mountain Estate, Ning Shiwu, leader of the Jinhuai Guild. Both are members of the 13 floors. Fan Yun smiled but said nothing, a tacit confirmation. You hatched your plan long before Duan Shihu's death. The letter of his corpse wasn't a clue regarding a secret meeting of members of the 13 floors. It was bait you deliberately left. Upon reading the letter, I'd almost certainly attempt to decrypt it, and even if I didn't go myself, I'd send Xiao Xian and others to investigate its contents. The Shuuyue Bureau needed to leave someone to oversee matters in the capital, which also dispatched someone for the investigation. Me. Without any other support after running into Yuan Sunsi, I'd be sure to ask Feng Xiao for his cooperation. Feng Xiao was already one of yours, so your trap was sprung. This whole book is secretly a PSA to treat your employees well. That's funny. Feng Xiao was already one of yours, and so your trap was sprung. Even if I were to sprout wings, I couldn't escape the 13 floors machinations. Incredible, Xiansheng. As expected of an old hand. I'm not your match. Fan Yun's smile was reserved. I know you're mistrustful by nature. The letter, Yuan Sensi, Feng Xiao, had any one of them turned up alone, you would have been suspicious. But confronted with all 3 at once, you became distracted, your judgment muddled. On top of that, while in Boling, you had to deal with the Chu family's mess. Buchu, even if you have wisdom on par with the gods, you're merely a man. It's impossible for every calculation you make to be flawless. The sound of footsteps came from outside. They were sure and steady, the footfalls of a powerful martial artist who had no intention of moving silently. Chubachu could hear every step clearly. 2 beautiful maids entered carrying a wooden tray. On the tray, fragrant wine rippled within a white jade saucer. The maid who stepped forward was clad in white robes of fine gauze, her complexion fair and her hair dark. Her steps were light and graceful. When she bent to set the saucer before them, the curve of her chest swelled beneath the loose drape of her clothing, and the faint scent of her perfume seemed to seep into one's heart. Chubachu was no monk oblivious to the vanities of the mundane world. From the moment he'd entered this room, though it was a mere corner within a damp cave, he had seen that every inch of it was lavishly furnished. Leaving aside the night pearls embedded in the stone walls, even the cat-tail cushion on which he sat was embroidered with gold and silver thread, covered in silk, and stuffed with soft cotton and cattail reeds. It was obviously an item of luxury. Nor had he failed to notice that, concealed within this chamber, there were quite a few entrances and exits, all leading to different areas. The room was both hidden and accessible, an ideal gathering place. Whatever else the 13 floors of Yunhai might want for, they certainly had no lack of wealth. The maid cast him a flirtatious glance, but found Chubachu stonily indifferent, his eyes downcast. She set down the saucer of wine and silently withdrew. Fan Yun watched the exchange with a silent smile. He took a single sip from the saucer. Since antiquity, those meant for greatness had been men possessing of extraordinary restraint. Even if those lovely women were to strip naked and dance before them, Fan Yun would not be moved. If Chubu Chu had been so easily swayed by their seductions, he'd have held this disciple of his in contempt. Shortly after the maids departed, two men entered. The first approached on slow steps and stopped in front of Chubu Chu. His boots were black, in a common style, but their quality was unmatched. Feng Xiao was so fussy. Even his boots were required to be outstanding. Chubu Chu recognized them at a glance. He raised his head and met Feng Xiao's eyes. The two gazed at each other, the silence stretching between them. Yuan Sensi smiled. You've only been apart a short while. Why do you look at each other like it's been a lifetime since you've last met? Chubuchu looked at Feng Xiao. I would like to hear it from Deputy Chief Feng's mouth. Is it true? Feng Xiao's expression was one of apathy. There was no smile, no mockery, no malicious glee. His gaze on Chubuchu was flat with disinterest. The frivoliousness from which he'd teased him was gone, as was the enthusiasm with which he'd admired his own reflection. In their place was a serene indifference, as if Chubuchu was merely a stranger passing by, unworthy of a second glance. When he finally spoke, he said one word. Yes. Before arriving in Bolang, you were already with them? Yes. The night of the revolt in Qingli Garden, when you insisted on climbing into my carriage, you coincidentally clashed with Yuan Sensi, saving my life. Even then? Yes. I was your trial, said Chubuchu. What did they offer you? Something the deputy chief of Jijian Bureau would be willing to join the 13 floors of Yuntai for. Surely, it must be extraordinary. Feng Xiao's expression finally flickered ever so slightly. Chubuchu noticed a fleeting look of pity. Pity for a loser who had been deceived. An itch came into Chubuchu's throat. He couldn't suppress a cough. Feng Xiao kept his voice very low, but it still echoed throughout the chamber. There are presently 3 demonic sects. He Huan sect, Huan Yue sect, and Fa Jing sect, the last of which I led. Many years ago, they were a single unified sect. Their leader was Chu Yu Wang, the strongest martial artist, not just among the demonic sects, but in all the world, Feng Xiao said. Chubuchu's expression remained placid. He nodded slightly. I've heard of this, yes. He'd been betrayed, surrounded by enemies on all sides. But still, he retained his composure, at least on the surface. Van Yun looked at his pupil and sighed to himself. If he had any choice, he wouldn't have used this method to coerce Chubuchu's cooperation. Alas, Chubuchu was a brilliant man and not the type to readily admit defeat. Only something unexpected and overwhelming, something so shocking it left him too stunned to react, would do. Without such an opportunity to convince him, it'd be nigh impossible to persuade Chubuchu to join the 13 floors of Yunhai. All right. In the chat, what do we think? Is he going to join, or is he going to be stubborn like he usually is? I personally think he's going to be stubborn. Without such an opportunity, okay, of course, it'd be far easier to kill him. But a mind like his was rare. The addition of Chubuchu to their organization would be akin to gifting wings to a tiger. Fan Yun wished to offer up Chubuchu's talent to the master he served, not merely kill him to eliminate an obstacle. Oh yeah, he's going to be stubborn. Stubborn. Yep, we're all in agreement. Before Chu Yu Wang's death, Feng Xiao continued, he left behind a technique capable of transferring one's blood and soul as well as recasting their meridians, called refining jade. However, this technique vanished with his death and no records remain. In the past, my master had 3 disciples. Besides Guang San and myself, we also had a Shimei. A few years ago, she was gravely injured. Even the best physicians and medicines had no effect. Only the refining jade technique could save her. It was to seek this technique that I joined the Jijian Bureau. Here, Yuan Sanxi took up the story. By coincidence, the pavilion leader has collected many ancient martial texts from around the world. The lost refining jade technique was among them. This technique was recorded in 2 separate volumes. After obtaining the first, Deputy Chief Fang tried it on Nishime. Her condition immediately improved. By this point, Chubuchu had guessed the rest. He nodded. So in order to obtain the second volume, you betrayed me. This was your trial for joining the 13 floors. If I weren't the pitiable fool duped by your schemes, your deep and earnest feelings would surely have moved me, Deputy Chief Fang. Another vote for stubborn. Okay. Look at your current predicament. Without my help, you have no way out. They doubted my sincerity, so they used you as the trial. If I could sell out even you, they could rest at ease. I didn't expect I was so important to Deputy Chief Fang. Chubuchi's mouth twisted with mockery. Feng Xiao crouched down so their eyes were level. You're wrong. You're not important. The position of Shuoyue Bureau Chief that you hold, that's what's important. Honestly, even I was surprised it went so smoothly. I thought for sure you'd bring more people, at least Qiao Xian or Zhang Sun. If you had, perhaps I'd have had a much harder time. Yet you only brought 2 Shuoyue guards, no better than errand runners, and left the capital with me, completely unconcerned. Can it be that you already trusted me to the point that you were willing to put your life in my hands? Chubuchu didn't speak. He only coughed, his hand supporting his weight on the cushion, becoming colder and whiter. His back was as straight as a pine, but there was a brittleness to it, as if it might snap at the first gust of wind. He was used to the coughing, but now he couldn't stop. His lungs burned like fire, filling his chest with waves of scorching pain. The colder his body grew, the hotter they burned. From his heart to his meridians, it spread like a wildfire, licking up withered grass, turning an expanse of soft green into fluttering gray ash. The flames engulfed everything. The creatures and the land, all hearts and their passion. He didn't need to reply. Feng Xiao understood. He laughed and grabbed Chubuchu's chin, forcing him to meet his gaze. Fan Xiangsheng said you're cold on the outside, yet hot on the inside. An icy exterior that conceals a heart full of passion. I didn't believe him before. Now I do, he sneered. How unfortunate that you placed your precious trust in the wrong person, Lord Chief. Damn. Actually, I need to blow my nose, then we'll start on the next chapter. 202:15. All right. Chapter 115. Fan Yun stood and watched. He made no move to stop them. He'd known Chubuchu and Feng Xiao were each unwilling to submit to the other. If they could be lured in with such promised rewards, both would be of great use to the pavilion leader. But it wouldn't do for them to be too friendly. As long as they were at odds, their leader could use one to check the other, and managing them would be much simpler. Thus he was pleased to no end to see Feng Xiao and Chu turn on each other. He watched the situation simmer, waiting until the moment before it boiled over to speak. All right, he said. From now on, we're a family. Chu has been my disciple for a long time, even if he is rather willful. Who's his family? Feng Xiao said, lip curling. He released Chu's chin and casually wiped his hand on Chu's clothes, as if merely touching his skin had been a great humiliation to him. Fan Qiansheng, when you came to recruit me, you did not say you'd be recruiting Chu as well. Our pavilion leader and San Si are both top-tier martial artists, with skills not inferior to my own. And you joined long before I did, so you have more experience. I can accept that. But this man... The glance he threw at Chu was full of contempt and ridicule. How exactly is this man qualified to be deputy leader instantly upon joining, to have a rank equal to myself? Fan Yu smiled. You jest. Bu Chu is the chief of the Shu Yue Bureau. You are from the Jijian Bureau. Was he not always your equal? That was only because he had Empress Dugu to give him a leg up, said Feng Xiao coolly. Her favor won him his current position. To be honest, I have yet to see this leader of yours. If I spoke some nonsense claiming to be loyal to the 13 floors for its own sake, I'd say you wouldn't believe me, Fan Xiansheng. You speak sincerely. I believe you, Fan Yun replied smoothly. I joined the 13 floors for 3 reasons. First, to obtain the refining jade technique. Second, your promise that I could attain rank and authority far beyond what I could achieve in Su. Third, so I wouldn't need to spend every day bickering with this Chu bastard. But now you're telling me not only must I see him regularly, we must serve as officials together after we bring about this new dynasty. I've sold him out. I can't take it back. But he's sure to hold a grudge against me. If you insist on welcoming him like this, is it any difference from putting a blade to my back? Fan Yun remained unbothered. Then what does Fei Gonzi propose? Either me or him. There can only be one. Feng Xiao narrowed his eyes and raised his chin. He oozed arrogance. The lines of his body were sharp as a blade, his eyes ablaze. Now this was the Feng Xiao Chu knew, and it was the image Deputy Chief Feng left in most people's minds. Wayward and unbridled, playful and teasing, it was like this Feng Xiao whiled away his time. Yet hidden beneath that veneer was someone proud and unrestrained, a man blessed by the heavens from birth. Though Fan Yun was happy to see conflict between the two, it would bring him no benefit if their enmity impaired the 13 floor's plans. He couldn't ignore Feng Xiao's declaration. He considered a moment and said, All right, I will speak to our leader. After Chu finishes his task, he will fake this death and head south. He can start over there. Feng Xiao's handsome face was cold and impassive, but he voiced no objections. Only belatedly did Fan Yun remember to ask, What do you think, Chu? Chu started to chuckle. As he laughed, he began to cough, and the harsher he coughed, the more he laughed until he was gasping for breath. Seems you've already decided everything for me. Does it matter whether I agree or not? Fan Yun's expression was mild as he watched Chu laugh like a madman, as if his pupil was no more than a willful child throwing a tantrum. Considering your situation, I was certain you wouldn't refuse. Chu laughed for nearly a quarter of an hour before he slowly lapsed into silence. Xiansheng, you're getting old, he said at last. Fan Yun raised a brow. Oh? Since the 11th year of the Jin dynasty's Tianyuan era, The northern dynasties have seen the three ways Northern Qi and Northern Shou, 5 dynasties across more than 2 centuries. They met with every kind of turmoil the foreigners of the north storming south, the flames of war, the rise of powerful clans, the collapse of dynasties, the struggle for power between Buddhists and Taoists. This continued until the reign of Emperor Wu of Northern Shou, who quelled the chaos and rebuilt everything anew. Despite the mediocre emperors who succeeded him, the long separated nations of the Central Plains are fated to become one once more. This will always be the case. Yang Jian may not be a match for the legendary 3 sovereigns, the 5 emperors, but he is an enlightened ruler, the first such after Emperor Wu Yuanyang. Fan Yun smiled. To think you have such a high opinion of Yang Jian. Chubuchu coughed several times and continued. No emperor before him, including those of Song, Qi, Liang, and Chen dynasties in the south, has turned his authority on the aristocrats. Yang Jian alone dared to overturn the status quo. He issued an edict promoting officials based on the criteria of meticulousness, prudence, efficiency, and honesty. Even the poor have a path through which they may elevate themselves. Perhaps it is a narrow path now, but in years to come it will broaden. Eventually, the nation of determining one's rank by dint of one's birth will be replaced entirely, and a new principle upon which the world turns will be born. I mean, it took a while, but here we are. Good night, Annika. Have a great weekend, and I will see you next week. I hope you enjoy the rest when you have time to listen later. Got like one more chapter, so about 10 more pages. Eventually, the notion of determining rank by dint of one's birth will be replaced entirely, and a new principle upon which the world turns will be born. Taking only this as an example, I must ask, who else would risk drawing the ire of the world's most powerful clans to execute such a mighty, radical idea? I fear that Xiansheng's chosen master lacks the resolve. Elevating talent where it is found is of course a good thing, Fan Yun countered. But Yang Jian is too reckless in his methods. He'll eventually be too buried in criticism to make any headway. Even the emperor can't ignore all the dissenting opinions around him. Already said being an emperor was always his destiny, but unfortunately he's an emperor doomed to fall. Dazzling as he may be now, his reign will be short-lived. A ruler must understand when to push and when to relent. They must understand that it's the narrow river that flows the farthest. Only then will they achieve a lasting legacy. Let me guess. Xianshen's chosen master is certainly not the emperor of southern Chen. If one wishes to conquer the land, they have 2 choices. The first is to follow in the footsteps of Yang Jian and wrest power from those who hold it via blood ties. But this took Yang Jian decades, far too long for your lord. He can't wait, so he's left with the second option. He must take an immense risk and walk the less trodden road. Craft and execute an enormous conspiracy. But have you truly thought this through? The lands have been divided for a long time. What the people want is crystal clear. Even if your lord succeeds in seizing the throne, if he doesn't govern with a hand at least as firm as Yang Jian's, his attempts will be in vain. Chubachu watched Fan Yun's face, which was growing darker and darker. He held nothing back as he spoke, quiet and steady, every word keen as a knife. Perhaps I wasn't clear. Did you really believe you had the power to convince me? You've woefully overestimated yourselves. Your 13 floors are no more than flies and dogs that should huddle in the dark sewers where you belong rather than showing your faces and making fools of yourselves. Upon hearing these words, Yuan Sanxi frowned. His hand twitched, but he only looked at Fan Yun. Feng Xiao's lashes were lowered. He wasn't looking at Chubuchu or anyone else. It was as if he'd detached himself from this place entirely, his thoughts inscrutable. Chubuchu had bluntly sawn open their ambitions and ideals bit by ragged bit, exposing the bloody guts for all to see. Fan Yun's smile finally vanished completely. When smiling, his face was kindly and amiable, but now, with his lips drawn into a thin line, there was a palpable chill about him. Buchu, I didn't teach you just for you to try to prove you know better than me. That's why I said you're getting old, Xiansheng. As people grow old, they grow arrogant. They believe their experience alone will allow them to surmount any challenge. It's a pity even Xiansheng is not exempt from this failing. Chubuchu was in enemy territory, facing off against three experts who could crush him with a finger, yet his tongue remained as poisonous as ever, giving no quarter to his opponents. I take it you're refusing to join? Asked Fan Yun. Even if the Jade of Heaven Lake can save your life. My apologies. Chubuchu pursed his thin lips. I've never deigned to work with fools. If someone like Feng Er can become a deputy leader, this is already a sinking ship. Now, if you're willing to surrender yourselves to the court and turn over your master, I might consider putting in a word for you before the Emperor. Fan Yun's attempt had failed utterly. He laughed in anger. We've known each other for years. We are master and disciple, as close as father and son. In light of this, I'll ask you one last thing. Do you understand the consequences of refusing? Us, as close as father and son, Chubuchu asked in surprise. So is it your family tradition for fathers to set up their sons to be betrayed, or for sons to push their fathers into evil? Such a unique family you have, Xiansheng. Fan Yun looked at Chubuchu as if he were regarding a corpse. At this moment, one of the stone walls slid open and a man walked in. The man's face had a delicate youthfulness that lent an androgynous air to his features. He was beautiful, if one ignored the eye patch covering one eye. That single flaw gave his face a sinister cast. His gaze fell first upon Feng Xiao. Between the two of you, I was sure Chu Chu would be the one to join, while you would refuse to submit even on pain of death. A shame. I was hoping to avenge this lost eye of mine. Feng Xiao shrugged. We each served our own masters then. Blades care not whom they cut. If I hadn't fought you with my full strength, I fear I would have lost my life. Fan Yun stepped between them. Xiansheng, Feng Gonzi didn't do it out of malice. Right now, we're all on the same side. We must let go of our grievances. Let us shake hands and make peace. Our leader has already agreed to compensate you properly. Yu Shiu bared his teeth in a chilling smile. Of course. I can't hold a grudge against one of our own. Chu Bu Chu. This is why you shouldn't be so quick to make enemies. A day will always come when you will meet again. But fear not. Out of respect for you foiling my plans time and again, I'll make sure your death isn't a painless one. Without warning, he leapt forward, his leg lashing out in a kick aimed for Chubuchu's chest. He held nothing back. If that kick connected, Chubuchu's ribs would shatter, their fragments puncturing his lungs in an instant. Yuan Sensi was closest. He had only to reach out and he could stop the kick, yet he had no intention of doing so. But there was still Fan Yun. Though he was beneath Yu Xiu as the third-rank Sen Xiansheng, Yu Xiu was wary of him, a clear sign that, of the two, the pavilion leader valued Fan Yun more. Yet Fan Yun said nothing either. He watched coolly from the side as if resolved to see Chubuchu suffer. It was impossible for Chubuchu to avoid the kick. He closed his eyes and waited for agony to lance through him. Yet someone else was faster than any of them had imagined. He swept in front of Yu Xiu and deftly deflected the attack. The two exchanged several swift blows before springing apart. Yushiu's face with a mask of fury. Feng Xiao, you said you would join us, so it was a lie! Fan Yun and Yuan Shen Shi both glared fiercely at Feng Xiao. No matter how excellent a martial artist Feng Xiao was, 3 opponents of their caliber were too much for him. He sneered and looked at Yushu like he was a fool. I've found Chubuchu distasteful for a long time. If you get first shot at him, will there be anything left for me? Look at the state of him. Yushu narrowed his eyes. And you plan to leave him alive for me? What are you going to do? Give him a few dainty slaps across his face like a woman? Feng Xiao laughed derisively and extended a hand toward Fan Yun. Fan Xiangqing, perhaps you'd be kind enough to lend me your dagger. Fan Yun untied the dagger at his waist and handed it over. He watched Feng Xiao carefully, as if testing whether Feng Xiao really had sworn himself to their cause. Feng Xiao looked down at the dagger in his hand. It was a rare and precious weapon, razor sharp and glinting with cold light. If a blade this sharp was drawn lightly over one's skin, blood would instantly well up in its wake. He gripped the dagger and walked step by step toward Chubuchu, who remained sitting, perfectly calm. They were a mere arm's length from each other, yet separated by a yawning chasm, a distance as vast as mountains and oceans between them. All right, we have one more chapter left before we're done with book 3. Yeah, tea was a good idea tonight. All right, 219:45. Okay. Chapter 116. His acting is too perfect. He's overdoing it, Chubuchu thought. If time could reverse and he could return to the moments before they entered Mount Tiannan, he'd have told Feng Xiao that going too far was just as bad as stopping short. Moderation was the key. Maybe Yushu and Yuan Sanxi couldn't tell, but he oughtn't underestimate Fan Yun. But this was a fantasy. Even he'd never expected Feng Xiao would do such a thing, that he'd sell him out to the 13 floors without a word to gain their trust. Yet this was indeed Feng Xiao's style. Willful and reckless, walking the treacherous path, fighting without leaving it out for himself. If Chubuchu hadn't been the poor sucker who'd been set up, he'd have praised Feng Xiao's plan. But right now, he was in a terrible predicament. If Feng Xiao showed him mercy, he'd be unable to win the trust of Yu Xiu and the others. If Feng Xiao showed none, all he'd sacrifice was a man who was neither an enemy nor a friend. So why wouldn't he be ruthless? Either do it right or don't do it at all. Chubuchu watched as Feng Xiao approached a step at a time. He dropped to one knee, coming eye to eye with Chubuchu. Feng Xiao's handsome face remained devoid of expression. A faint light flickered in the depths of his eyes, cold and remote. There was no reflection of Chubuchu within them. He was on the knife's edge between life and death, but Chubuchu's mind was wandering. If it were him, he thought, what would he do? One couldn't capture a tiger cub without venturing into the tiger's den. If Chubuchu had been in the same position, perhaps he'd have made the very same choice as Feng Xiao. Chubuchu silently chuckled to himself. The fact that he was thinking about this at all was proof his heart was in turmoil. Chubuchu had always been cold and decisive, a man who didn't hesitate to weave even himself into his own plots. Never before had he wondered anything of the sort. Have you ever thought about how you will die? He heard Feng Xiao ask. Chubuchu tilted his head a little as he gave it serious thought. I used to think I'd die in the Chu manner, but I didn't. After I left, there were a few treacherous incidents that I thought I was done for, but I didn't die then either. Later, in the Khaganate, I thought I'd die in that yurt with Yu Xiu. But in the end, you came in time. Feng Xiao's smile didn't reach his eyes. Then you've been quite fortunate. Chibuchu nodded. I think so too. Feng Xiao's hand flashed forward. Coldness slid into Chubuchu's chest, and sharp agony exploded through him. He looked down at the dagger buried to the hilt in his flesh. Blood spilled from the wound, soaking his robes in crimson. Pain. Excruciating pain. He furrowed his brow, trying to recall the last time he'd felt pain like this. There was the year he'd left the Chu family. At that time, both his lungs and heart had troubled him greatly, and he'd been caught in a heavy downpour on the road. He'd curled up beneath the eaves, but the wind whipped the rain in, battering his face and drenching his clothes. He'd burned with fever, his head hazy and muddled. He thought he'd die that night. All right. We thankfully have a picture. They didn't think he'd do it. Look at those expressions. Then there was the time, not long ago at all, when he had used incense of helplessness against Yushiu in the Western Cognate, poisoning himself along with his enemy and aggravating his existing illness. Yushiu had wrapped his fingers around Chubuchu's neck. His vision had sparked with stars, and every breath had been excruciating. But it hadn't been as painful as it was now. Could the dagger be poisoned? He instinctively tried to draw breath, but it only aggravated his wound. His entire body trembled with pain, and his face was paler than the gauzy snow-white robes of those two beautiful maids. Bloody foam bubbled at the corner of his mouth as he panted raggedly. But he didn't moan. Feng Xiao had thought he'd be treated to sneering mockery and vicious curses from Chubuchu. But there was nothing. He saw Chubuchu's thin lips, stained with blood, tremble as they moved in a near soundless sentence. You saved my life last time. I've repaid you now. Yeah. Oh my God. A slight involuntary tremor went through Feng Xiao's hand. He was still holding the dagger's hilt. That quiver instantly worsened the pain Chubuchu was in. Blood, thick and red, slid from the corner of his mouth, dripped from the tip of his chin. It fell drop by drop onto his lapels, dyeing the fabric with bright splashes of red. The whole thing had happened in a flash. For a moment, everyone stood dumbfounded. Shock and disbelief scrawled over Yuan Sensi's face. Even Yushiu thought Feng Xiao had gone mad. Chubuchu had refused to join, but now wasn't the time to kill him. Yushiu had only wanted to torture him a bit to vent his anger, but Feng Xiao had taken it a step further, going straight for the kill. Stop! Fan Yun cried, reaching out to shove Feng Xiao away. Feng Xiao didn't dodge. He allowed Fan Yun to push him back a few steps. Fan Yun stepped forward to examine Chubuchu's wound. In seconds, he'd sealed several major acupoints and called for someone to bring gauze and medicine. Feng Xiao had shown no mercy. All of them could see the blade was fully buried inside Chubuchu's body. Even Yushiu couldn't claim Feng Xiao was putting on an act. You're too rash, Feng Gonzi, Fan Yun snapped. Even if he refuses to join us now, he's still more use to us alive. Very carefully, he drew the dagger from Chubuchu's chest. A fresh spurt of blood followed the tip as it was extracted. Chubuchu slumped against one of the cave's rocks, limp and unmoving. He was barely conscious. Like I said, Feng Xiao replied coldly, it's either me or him. We have the Jijian Bureau already. I don't see how keeping the Shu Yue Bureau chief alive is useful. Unless it is so, he can rat me out to the court. Fan Yun was furious. If he dies, a great number of our plans will be ruined. Feng Xiao smiled thinly. To think Fan Xiansheng would still value him so much, as expected of the disciple who was your pride and joy. In the end, you can't put aside your fondness for him. But you were the one who lured him here. To get so upset over it now, don't you think it's hypocritical? No one in the Yue Bureau knows he's here, Fan Yun said severely. We could have used him as bait for his subordinates, then captured them all in one fell swoop. Our leader admires Chubuchu and sees him as a kindred spirit. Not long ago, he sent a message informing us that he wished to meet him in person. If he dies on our watch, how will I explain? Feng Xiao dusted off his clothes and said nonchalantly, Those are Fan Xiansheng's problems, not mine. He turned to leave without sparing a glance for anyone else. Yuan Sanxi watched him melt into the darkness. That man has a heart of stone to deal a fatal blow to his former comrade without even batting an eye, he whispered. If we welcome him, I fear we'll be cultivating a threat to ourselves. Yu Xiu snorted a laugh. If anything, he did me a service. If Fan Xiansheng hadn't forbidden it, I'd have killed Chubuchu before he got to him. Fan Yun checked Chubuchu's pulse. After a moment, he sighed. I'll take him back first. His wound is severe. I doubt he'll wake up anytime soon. There's no way he can meet our leader like this. I'll have to send him word and wait for his decision. If there's anything else, we can discuss it later. So saying, he scooped Chubuchu up in his arms and hurried away. Feng Xiao's stab had been ruthless. Chubuchu had lost too much blood. His pulse was terribly faint. His life hung on by a thread. To save him, Fan Yun poured all his strength into protecting Chubuchu's already fragile heart, preserving his life and channeling Yang energy into him. For 4 hours, he pulled Chubuchu back from the edge of death, a feat more exhausting than dueling a master martial artist, before some heat finally returned to Chubuchu's chest. For the moment, he was out of danger. Even Chubuchu didn't see that coming. Yep. Fan Yun's face was white with fatigue, and his legs were weak and wobbly. He entrusted Chubuchu's care to his maid and returned to his room to meditate and recover his strength. The woman left to serve Chubuchu was one of the maids who'd brought the wine saucers earlier. She soaked a cloth and wrung out the water, using it to dab away the blood on Chubuchu's face. Chubuchu's injuries were severe, and Fan Yun had given strict orders that he wasn't to be moved or turned. The maid carefully peeled away his outer robes, leaving him clothed in a single inner garment. He was a gruesome sight, over half his body crusted with dried blood. The maid moved him as gently as possible, afraid to startle him and cause him more pain. But Chubuchu was insensible to everything. From beginning to end, his eyes remained shut, as silent as a corpse. Almost done. The cave they were in had once contained treasures from a bygone dynasty. After the trove's discovery, Yuan Sensi had transformed it into a base for the 13 floors of Yunhai, one of several such strongholds in the north. It was spacious yet concealed, guarded by traps and hidden passages, and all of the chambers were conveniently interlinked. Its innermost comforts were in no way inferior to the manor of any noble clan. In fact, its chambers might have been even more lavishly appointed. Meng Xiao, however, was a man who'd spent his days drowning in luxury and was moreover fussy to the extreme. He showed no reaction even when presented with the most opulent of furnishings, using them as casually as one might common wares. The chamber where he had stabbed Chubuchu reeked of blood. He left it without a backward glance and returned to his room. A familiar sensual fragrance hit him as he entered, overpowering the metallic stench that lingered in his nose. A half-naked beauty reclined upon his bed, her sweet scent adding a touch of charm to the erotic picture before him. A thin blanket was artfully draped over the beauty's chest to reveal the rounded top of her ample breasts, and a pair of long legs peeked from beneath the covers, smooth and pale as creamy jade. Her eyes fluttered open, shimmering like starlight beneath the glow of night pearls. When she smiled at Feng Xiao, even the stars adorning the night sky outside seemed to lose their luster. "You're back," she said languidly. Only 2 words, but they were drippingly tender, seeping into the listener's bones. Why do I think that maid's a plant? I think it's actually is his Shixian. Or Shimei? Feng Xiao felt as if a delicate claw was tickling his ear. Anyone who could remain unaffected by such a tableau wasn't fit to be called a man. "Why are you in my bed?" Feng Xiao didn't move from the doorway. His eyes were tranquil as he looked her up and down as if she were a statue of stone. Feng Xiao Lian nearly laughed in rage. "I'm beginning to suspect that none of the men within the 13 floors have anything between their legs. You're the 4th one who's looked at this body of mine without any reaction." Feng Xiao raised one brow. "Who are the other 3? Please introduce me to these upstanding gentlemen." Feng Xiaolian sniffed coquettishly and slid to the edge of the bed, wrapping the blanket around her in a makeshift robe. She sat up and began to count off on her fingers. "The pavilion leader, Fan Xiangsheng, Yu Xiu, and now you. Fan Xiangsheng has incredible willpower, so he hardly counts. Yu Xiu's heart belongs to another. In his eyes, I'm scarcely better than a corpse. Anyway, I'd rather not provoke him. But you, why are you so unaffected? It makes no sense. They're all gay. Ha ha ha." She rose from the bed, the dark blanket forming a train behind her as she padded over to Feng Xiao and circled around him. Without warning, she reached out to embrace him from behind, only to find her arms full of empty air. She trod on the blanket and tripped, falling to the floor. "Feng Xiao!" she cried out as if she might pass out from rage. "What about Yuan Sensi? Is he also immune to your charms?" Feng Xiao smiled and bent down, scooping her up and tossing her carelessly onto the bed. Feng Xiao Lian slanted him a look, her demeanor a seamless blend of sensuality and innocence. "Do you think I accept just anyone? I have no interest in someone like Yuan Sensi. What a rare creature you are." Feng Xiao climbed atop her unhurriedly and lowered his mouth to her ear. "You've met the pavilion leader before." Feng Xiao Lian thought herself the most peerless of beauties, a woman who'd seen it all. But when she felt the heat of Feng Xiao's neck, breathing on her neck, she found her composure slipping. "Of course I have. Be gentle." Her voice rose in pitch, turning into a drawn-out gasp. They call her something, and I'm not... fine. Whore. Man's voice from behind the door. In the next moment, they heard the speaker turn on his heel and leave. On the bed, Feng Xiao Lian blinked. "Why did you grab my waist?" "Why did you play along?" countered Feng Xiao. Feng Xiao Lian smiled. "Isn't it an honor to enjoy a romantic evening with the deputy leader?" They weren't upstanding. I got it, Truffle. "I'd bet good money our eavesdropper just now was Yuan Sanxi. Is he so jealous of me?" Feng Xiaolian giggled. "No, he doesn't trust you. You knew it was him from his footsteps. You're quite skilled. You shouldn't have ranked below Duan Hu and Yu Hang." Feng Xiaolian stretched languidly. "I did obtain the title of the 13th director. Shi San Xiansheng. But it was only thanks to my reputation and my knowledge of some secret pear cultivation techniques. How could grandmasters and experts like you hold me as your equal? Fenlong, you're flirting with me now, but your heart isn't in it. Could it be? The hand behind Feng Xiao's back slowly clenched into a fist. Could it be you're like Yu Xiu? You already have a beloved, she finished. Feng Xiao neither confirmed nor denied it. What do you think? Feng Xiao Lian twined her arms around his neck. I think most people are too far beneath you to catch your eye. The only person you love is yourself. Feng Xiao smiled. You know, I'm starting to like you. What kind of man is the pavilion leader? Why are you so interested in the pavilion leader? Feng Xiaolian asked curiously. He has built such a formidable organization and gathered so many powerful masters and factions beneath him. Who wouldn't be curious? I'm newly appointed deputy leader, yet I've never laid eyes on the man. Surely that's rather odd. Worry not, Feng Xiaolian said with a smile. It's the Qi Shi festival tomorrow, the 7th day of the 7th month. I heard the leader will be here as well. Our 13 floors will be a full house then. All of us will be present. Something flickered in Feng Xiao's eyes. Will Lin Yong and Ning Shiwu also be here? No, it was funny. Of course, said Feng Xiaolian. You didn't think they really went to Donghai Commandery. This is the real meeting location. But of the 13 floors, I still don't know the identities of ninth and 10th directors, Ji Xiansheng and Shi Xiansheng. Who are they? Feng Xiaolian tittered. If you act so impatient, I'll start getting suspicious. Perhaps you only pretended to join so you could probe for information. Feng Xiao smiled back. If I say I'm here for you, would you believe me? Feng Xiaolian blinked as Feng Xiao lowered his head as if to kiss her. She had just parted her lips to speak when her expression shifted. She took to the air like a swallow sweeping out from beneath Feng Xiao. The dark blanket covered her was torn to shreds in the air, yet she ignored it and sprang toward the exit. Help! But Feng Xiao was faster. Before she could put any force behind her cry, a bloody gash rent her throat. Feng Xiaolian opened her lovely eyes wide and stared at Feng Xiao. Never had she imagined she'd meet such a comical, unceremonious end. How clever of you. I only wanted to knock you out, but you saw through me, Feng Xiao said regretfully. When he drew back his hand, there was a blood-stained zither string in it. Had Shu Yang known Feng Xiao would pluck out the strings of his beloved Yu Yin to use as a murder weapon, Chu Bu Chu wouldn't have needed to do anything at all. He'd have died right there, apoplectic with rage. Ah, this is going to be rather troublesome, Feng Xiao murmured to himself, still holding one of the beauty's supple arms. Chubuchu wandered within the darkness, his body sinking endlessly down. He felt someone take hold of his hand, slowly pulling him out of the abyss, inch by inch. His savior had immense strength. Chubuchu was unable to resist him. He was dragged up to solid ground, but his suffering continued. An intense agony racked his body, and memories poured in like the rising tide. He wanted to cough, but the pain prevented him. His mind was disoriented and confused. For a moment, he was certain he was still 9 years old, thrust back into his darkest hour with no end in sight. He couldn't die. He absolutely couldn't die. He had to live. He must live. His lips were pried open, and a coolness trickled in. The searing pain in his throat was alleviated, but the agony in his chest burned only more fiercely. Someone seemed to be whispering in his ear. They gripped his feeble fingers, their touch light as a feather, as tender as if he were a treasure they were afraid to break. For as long as he could remember, Chubuchu had experienced all sorts of ups and downs as he traveled the treacherous road that was his life. He was fated to lose those dear to him. He was a cold and callous man. It was impossible that he could receive such gentleness. So it's a dream, after all. He breathed a silent sigh before letting the darkness claim him once more. And that is the end of book 3 of Peerless, which is very interesting. Okay, so I enjoyed that. I like it's like a soft cliffhanger. We definitely have a lot more coming. Yeah, imagine reading this before the 4th book was out. Oh, yeah. I could see why you would be hooked, Esper Lady. Yeah. No, I'm very much looking forward to book 4 and then book 5. I kind of want to see how he's going to do this. If he's going to do a like James Bond moment where like he just takes them out one by one, or what's going to happen. But I'm definitely looking forward to Tuesday when we at least get to find out what comes next. So hopefully people will be able to join us. I think next week is just the normal week, Tuesday, Thursday. But if that changes, I will let you know. But yeah, I am very much enjoying this series. But yeah. All right. We definitely went a little longer than usual today, so I'm going to say a very good night to everyone. Thank you all who joined me live, and thank you very much to everyone who watched this later. I hope you enjoyed. We didn't have trigger warnings today. Yay! But yeah, good night. Hope to see you Tuesday. Bye-bye. Oh yeah, and have a great weekend. Now bye-bye.